The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.
Keefer and Kurre show back here on TKR, Tony Kurre Radio. You can hear the show at least 5 days a week, perhaps even more. If you think, man, this show's so stinking good, I need to hear it again and again and again and again, wherever you get your favorite podcast. And if that ain't enough, you can see these wonderful mugs right here on our Tony Kurre page, right here on our YouTube channel. And, of course, also on television on ABC 3340 coming up this Saturday from 10:30 to 11 o'clock. You'll see Kip and I sit on the couch, and we'll get into some, what are we talking about this weekend? I guess a little Preakness coming up here. I know that Mystic Dan is going to run. That's a good thing.
Yeah, Mystic Dan will be in the field, so we do have a chance for a possible Triple Crown. And by all accounts, he's working well in Maryland in his first appearance. I'm also excited. My special guest on the radio is a good friend of mine from Atlanta named Chip Lake, who has partial ownership in a horse named Seize the Gray, who just missed, Tony, getting enough points to get in the Derby. But he, on Derby Day, won another stakes race at Churchill, and he is scheduled to be in the Preakness field. So very exciting. Awesome. For a very close friend of mine, Chip Lake, who will be in Baltimore making the walk over with his horse in the Preakness Seize the Gray.
I was talking to my son a couple days ago about the big horse races coming up, and he knows that you're a big horse guy. And he was like, wasn't it a long time between Triple Crown winners? I said, it was my favorite number's 37. I said, it was 37 years before Farrell came in. And, of course, and then, 4 or 5 years later, we had another one. Which kind of took a little bit of the shine off the fact that it just seemed like it was never going to happen again. All of a sudden it happened twice, almost kind of like a 16s beating a 1 seed, right? I mean, it never happened. All of a sudden it happened twice within a couple of years. It was kind of like, wow, that's kind of crazy.
Well, it's tough. It's tough because, everybody laments and we talk about sports all the time, about how players are so delicate now and can't be overused. Horsemen are just as bad because the Derby, of course, runs the first Saturday of May, the Preakness 2 weeks later, and then the Belmont in New York 3 weeks later. Mm-hmm. They're 3 different tracks, 3 different distances, 3 different cities, and the horsemen always moaned throughout that 37-year drought that, well, it's just too hard on the horses. Nobody's ever going to win it again, blah, blah, blah. I always like to talk about 1948, Tony, when Citation won the Derby, won the Preakness, and his trainer, Jimmy Jones, said, it's 3 weeks till the Belmont. That's way too much time for my horse to be sitting around. So he took him to Atlantic City, New Jersey, the week before the Belmont. He won the Jersey Derby, then went to New York and won at Belmont to close the Triple Crown. So he won 4 races in 5 weeks. So it's a little bit different era now.
And of course, the Belmont, the longest out of those 3.
A mile and a half. That's a long way.
That is a long way. When they come down that stretch that first time, you're like, wow, and they've got a long way to go after that too. So, all right. So I got a couple things I wanted to throw at you. One, I should not even throw out to you because I know when I throw out something, you're smart enough and good enough that you're going to probably take this and run, but I'm going to have to cut you off because I've spent too much time on the other, although we could do it another time, another week. So I'm watching the Stallions game. By the way, very entertaining. 19,000 folks down there. The weather was fantastic. This past Saturday at 3 o'clock, the Stallions are undefeated. They were playing the St. Louis Battlehawks, and of course, that being A.J. McCarron's football team was the first time.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
First time that A.J. played football in the state of Alabama since he left. And of course, I have kind of kept up with him, not only because he's got a hot smoking wife.
Catherine Webb. Whew.
Yeah, she is something else.
Ask Brett Musburger. He was 75, and that awoke a lot of instincts that Brett thought were long gone.
I think it made him retire and move to Vegas is what it did. We need to get her some modeling work because I don't see her enough on television. Anyway,
that's for sure.
And he played a couple of years, I think, for the Cincinnati Bengals. So I kind of kept up with it. But anyway, so they go to these, and I didn't know a lot of the rules. Okay. I love it because there's a 3-point play, a 2-point play, a 1-point play. There's all this crazy. And a lot of people are like the purist. It is fantastic. It really keeps you engaged in the game. I don't know why you're up by 1, you go for 2. You're up by 3, you go for 2. You're up by 1, you go for 2. I don't know. It seems like everyone wants to go for 2. I'm not sure why that happens. Anyway, so there's a coach's challenge. And the coach's challenge works out like if they have, and this is not even the topic I want to get into today, but I'm going to set the table for next week because you need some time to think about this topic for what I'm going to throw at you, okay? But the coach's challenge, if there's a call that should be called, you can challenge, or if there's a call that was called and you don't think it's a good call. So in other words, if you think there was like in the NFL, I don't think you can do that. If there's not a play, if there's not a foul called, you can't go back and look at it. In the UFL, you can. So Mike Pereira, who is the replay guy from the National Football League, is on screen, on the big screen, on television, talking us through the challenge. He's the guy that decides whether the play is going to go through or not. And he's talking to us. He's like, yeah, I can see where, the hand goes up here. And I think that said blah, 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 blah. And it's done in the course of about 30 seconds. Super, super quick. And I said, wow, I really like this. As opposed to going to the guy and actually having a conversation with him, he is the man that makes the decision. And so he's talking himself through it. And it's only him, which should only be one guy, because if there's two guys, then they can disagree. And it's just really, and I thought, I looked at my son, I said, you know what? We got this going on. We got the cash payment thing going on with Donald Trump right now. We got some major whistleblower thing going on with Apple right now. I said, we love transparency. We it used to be you never talked about sex, you never talked about religion, and you never talked about politics, right? And now you're nowhere unless you talk about all three, sometimes perhaps in the same flipping sentence, right? We never talked about politics. You have these partitions when you go in to vote, so people can't see who you're voting for. But then the minute you walk out the door, you're telling everyone I'm voting for Biden or I'm voting for Trump. It's like, what happened? We never talked. That was something like that was rude. If you ask somebody who you voting for, that was rude. It was
offensive.
Rude.
Yeah,
it really was. And now everyone you can't even go a day without stating your preference. And so we love transparency. I want you to think. Again, this is not even the topic for today, but your head's spinning, I know. I want you to think about how transparency in this world, we've got 14.3 billion cameras that are in the world right now that are on. You can't get away with anything anymore. Everyone knows everything, whether it's social media. Hell, it's so bad that we got people putting their own murders on Instagram. I mean, people want to document everything, even when they know they're going to get caught. I want you to get into transparency. I want you to think about that next week. You got me?
Yeah, I'm already, like you said, my head's spinning right now.
I know it's a big one. It's going to be deep. It's going to be good. All right. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. This past week, they came out with a list of Hall of Famers. Peter Frampton, Foreigner, Dave Matthews Band, Mary J. Blige, Cher, Kool and the Gang, Ozzy Osbourne, Jimmy Buffett. Those would be our inductees for 2024. Before I go any further, any thoughts on any of those 8?
Well, Ozzy Osbourne, I think, is a slam dunk, and so is Jimmy Buffett. Jimmy Buffett's there's some great stuff, Tony, on YouTube right now. They had a big tribute in California recently, and just about every major figure in music came for the Jimmy Buffett Memorial kind of tribute concert, and it is phenomenal. And people telling stories about Buffett and just how he lived his life more on his own terms than anybody, that all these people that live their life on their own terms every day just admired. I mean, I always, like the whole persona of Jimmy Buffett, but watching that tribute was just fantastic. So I'm really glad he's being recognized, because maybe not the greatest musician or songwriter ever, but certainly a guy that had his own niche and did things his way. He should have sang the Sinatra song, because there's nobody who did it his way more than Buffett. Some of the rest of them, I don't know. What are your thoughts? I guess Cher is somebody that would be in, and Mary J. Blige, but to me, Ozzy, who's still a major figure, and Buffett were our slam dunks.
Peter Frampton was up for his 26th time.
Yeah,
and he quite frankly is like, and he got in as a fan favorite. They vote in for fan favorite, so he was voted in as a fan favorite. I think he deserves to get in. I think one of the reasons he deserves to get in is he's still incredibly relevant, and he's still playing. I think there's a lot to be said about a guy who's in his 70s and 80s and he's still playing. It's
amazing.
It doesn't have to. So I think there's Foreigner really opens up a really interesting can of wow, we're going to let them in. And I say let them in because I didn't think they were going to get in. And we'll get into that a little bit. Dave Matthews Band seems like it's way too early, but they've been around for 25 years. The requisite, of course, you have to have had your first album.
Johnny Come Latelys.
Yeah, Mary J. Blige, don't know enough about Mary J. Blige. Does not seem. I'm of the man that if you're still producing new music or you're still coaching, It doesn't feel right for a coach to be in the Hall of Fame. Mac Brown should not be in the College Football Hall of Fame if he's still coaching football.
I agree.
For me, that's something that should be done after you're finished. But, and I'll say Cher should get in, Kool and the Gang, absolutely. I think they should get Ozzy Osbourne and Jimmy Buffett. Would Jimmy have gotten in had he not passed away? I don't know if this vote was before or after. I'm assuming it was after. So would have Jimmy Buffett gotten in to the Hall of Fame, and he certainly should get in there. But Dee Snider of Twisted Sister came out a couple days ago and said, can I, and he's been a staunch opponent, I should say, of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. First of all, because he probably knows that there's not a snowball's chance in hell a Twisted Sister is ever going to get in.
Yeah.
Not only because they didn't have enough songs, but they just weren't that good. They were kind of a novelty band, although
and just not mainstream enough. I mean,
you're going to make an argument for Devo. I guess you can make an argument for Twisted Sister. And the thing is, they're still relevant. I mean, I'm still hearing their music. They're still in TV commercials, and he's still doing some radio. But said, can you please start inducting these acts in before they die? So a band called MC5 is going to be getting in, and evidently MC5, the last surviving member, passed away this past week. And they were like, it's a damn shame because when they first were up for ballot, the entire band was alive, and now they're all dead, and none of them's going to be alive to actually see their induction ceremony. Takes me back to 2016. There's this guy named Kenny Stabler. For some reason, could not get in the Hall of Fame, was an MVP, was a Super Bowl winning quarterback, put up some monster numbers with the Raiders, and for some reason could not get into the Hall of Fame. A lot of people would say that it was a personal issue.
Yeah.
He did not have it out really good with the writers. He bumped heads with the writers a lot, but everyone said he was a hell of a great guy. I had one night down at Norm's that I could share with you, one night that I had with him that was outrageous. It was fantastic. We must have made 15 trips to the bathroom. It was wonderful. And he had that long gray hair. It was fantastic. But he gets in posthumously a year after he passes away.
Yeah, which is terrible.
I don't have a doubt in my brain that Mark McGuire, A-Rod, and for gosh sakes, Pete Rose will get into the Baseball Hall of Fame, but it's going to have to be after they die. They're not going to
especially
allow
Pete.
They're not going to let Pete enjoy that. They're not. They're going to have to wait till he dies, and he'll get in the year after he dies, maybe because he is dead, maybe because he can't enjoy it, maybe because when people die, we tend to want to put down our torches and we go, listen, the body's not cold yet. Let's just chill out and let's remember what this man's life was all about. I don't know if we're going to do it like for people like O.J. Simpson. We just saw what happened there and no one seemed to give a shit, or Bill Cosby or someone of that type. But Pete Rose, he didn't kill anybody. He made a stupid thing, and now you can bet on baseball games while the game's going on. The game has changed a lot. We just gave Reggie Bush back his trophy, for God's sake.
Unbelievable.
So
I think I told you last year when I was at the Hall of Fame, I was surprised there were 2 or 3 Pete Rose exhibits in there.
Yeah, he's in the
But
Hall
the
of
only
Fame.
place he's not present is in the section where all the people are enshrined. They have a complete wall display about Pete Rose most hits in Major League history, and I was kind of admiring that because I was shocked. And I said something to Mark, my friend who was with me. I said, you know, Pete's got plenty of presence here. It's just ridiculous that they're denying him being in the hall. And this guy standing next to me says, he bet on baseball. And I said, oh, you mean baseball? Sponsored by FanDuel, the official gambling entity of Major League Baseball? And he kind of walked away, and my friend Mark said, that was way over that guy's head.
Yeah. There's this team called the Las Vegas A's, I think, that's going to be playing out there sometime soon. Yeah, I don't have any doubt that and maybe when Pete gets in, then it's going to open up the door for everyone else. That was in the steroid era, which is a totally different argument for a different time.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, this is not the Morality Hall of Fame. This is not the Ethics Hall of Fame. It's the Baseball Hall of Fame. It's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. People that are judgmental and keep a Ken Stabler out because they don't approve of his activities. Well, you know, how holy are sports writers, Tony? Good grief.
Did you ever hear the story about the writer who actually planted some cocaine on Kenny Stabler's window?
Oh my gosh.
There was, I forget where I read the story, and I got to be careful because it may have been told to me in confidence, and I was told, and I would never repeat it. But evidently there was a night where Kenny and a writer got into it at a bar somewhere, and that writer had some coke on him, and he laid some cocaine on the well of his vehicle, went back inside, told the police that you may want to check Kenny's vehicle, and someone had seen the man put the cocaine in the window well, and he ended up getting arrested instead of Kenny. Hey,
Well,
anyway,
good.
yeah. So I guess my question to you is, well, not even a guess. My question is, if you know they're going to get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I got a list here, and I couldn't believe how long it was, really. These are folks who are not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Bryan Adams, Phil Collins. Cannot believe Phil Collins not in the Hall of Fame. Greg Allman, Bad Company, America. BTO, Black Crowes, Boston. Bon Jovi, Joe Cocker, Roger Daltrey, Foghat, Jeg Isles, Three Dog Night, Pete Townsend. Styx is not in. If you're going to put Foreigner in, you got to put Styx in.
Oh,
they're that band. I mean, I think they toured together for like 17 years. Sting, Motley Crue, Robert Plant. I cannot believe is not in the Rock
That's
and Roll.
incredible.
Sammy Hagar, Grand Funk, Guess Who, Don Henley, Kansas, Jethro Tull, Cyndi Lauper. Make an argument. She had enough hits. She's been out there and she's still playing. She's still on there. The Monkees, Huey Lewis and the News, and Meatloaf, REO Speedwagon. Those are just some of the bands, the top echelon bands. There are a handful of bands in there right there. They're going to get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. If you know you're going to get into the Hall of Fame, should you vote them in so they can enjoy it while they're alive?
Absolutely.
Now, hold on just a sec. Now, hold on. The Beatles got in on their third time. Okay.
It took 3 times?
It took 3 times. We knew the Beatles were getting in.
Yeah.
But the reason
that's asinine.
Well, the reason they did that, though, is if you open up the Keefer Hall of Fame for horses, and you've got 50 horses that are slam dunks, you can't put all 50 in the first year because you won't have anything else to put in the following year. So you have to keep it fresh enough for Hall of Fame people. You have to have 8 or 9. Now, Major League Baseball has done 9 times. No one into the Hall of Fame.
Oh, I know.
2002, I think it was a couple of years ago, where they had no one to put in the Hall of Fame, and it was, quite frankly, a bummer. I mean, they had nothing to celebrate in Cooperstown. So I understand where they listen, we may want to hold this one back because they have to be looking forward. Okay, if we're going to put these in for 2024, who's going to be 2025, 20? Because quite frankly, I don't think the shit that's out there right now is even worth a sniff of Hall of Fame. Is Dre going to be in the Hall of Fame? I don't know. Is Keith Urban going to be in the Hall of Fame? I don't know these things. So I understand that some of these guys should be in the Hall of Fame right now, but we do have to kind of step lightly, don't we? We can't just put them all in at one time.
Yeah, I mean, that's a problem. I would like to know who was in the very first class of the Hall of Fame that ranked ahead of the Beatles. That would be an intriguing question to ask. Also,
I will tell you. Go ahead, but I will tell you.
Oh, you can't. Okay, yeah. Good. And you mentioned baseball. Last year, they put Scott Rowland in, who I thought was a good player in his career. He played for the Phillies and the Reds and the Cardinals. But I don't think he really had the numbers. And being the Pete Rose proponent I am, Scott Rowland had half, Tony, literally. He barely got to 2,000 hits. Pete Rose had over 4,000 hits, and Scott Rowland's in the Hall of Fame. That's an absolute abomination.
No. Hall of Fame first class, Chuck Berry, Elvis Presley, Little Richard, Fats Domino, Buddy Holly, the Everly Brothers, Ray Charles, and also Sam Phillips, the founder of Sun Records, and Alan Freed, the disc jockey, who, of course, was credited with being Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So as you can see, there were a billion other bands that were going to make it into the Hall of Fame. And by the way, they were inducting guys back in 1986, and the building wasn't built in the mid 90s. So they had a hell of a nice first class when they opened.
And it's in Cleveland, for God's sake. The mistake by the lake.
I've been there many times to that Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I would urge you, if you have not gone, I would love to take you there.
Yeah, I was in Columbus just 2 months ago and should have made the trek there for sure.
So assuming that some of these guys are getting kind of old, because listen, Phil Collins is looking rough. Now, Genesis was just on the road this past year. He cannot stand up. He had to sit down the entire show as they did.
Oh,
Genesis.
boy.
Joe Cocker should be in. Roger Daltrey, they're still on tour. I'm just trying to think of some guys where they have to start looking ahead and go, listen, do we want Roger to be alive when we induct him? I would think,
Absolutely.
I would think so. So should we change the rules a little bit? Because this Hall of Fame in rock and roll is unlike any other Hall of Fame in any other business, because the people that are in this Hall of Fame are still performing.
Yeah.
Major League Baseball don't have 82-year-olds being inducted into the Hall of Fame and they're still pitching on Saturday. It doesn't have. So, I mean, this is the only Hall of Fame that I know of, musically speaking, that you can still have a performer. And to me, and like I just said before, it feels weird letting someone go in the Hall of Fame when they're still doing their thing.
Yeah, for sure. I should know this, Tony, but who selects the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees?
There are writers that are part of
writers,
that.
Of course.
Yeah, it's writers always get a piece of that. I'm not sure. I don't think there's writers. There's a fan vote that is a big part of it. And beyond that, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But I know I think there are. I've heard several people, because writers are always a big part of this. I'm not sure why writers get a big piece of this. I really don't. I mean, like a Ben Cook, who I love to death, was a perfect person for the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame because he was Major League Baseball.
Oh,
he never played.
He
He never played, but I mean, he loved it. I mean, talk about a guy. He could have been the commissioner of Major League Baseball. I get that guy, but these other people who don't, maybe they're not purist. These writers that have kept out the steroid era guys, eventually it's going to come down to the point where everything's going to be legal. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, marijuana is not legal. Gambling's legal. Is there going to be any doubt the performance enhancing materials will somehow be illegal?
Yeah.
Sometimes we still have Olympic people trying to juice up before the Olympics. Or at least it won't be disciplined like it is right now. It won't be looked upon as such a horrible thing because people are just getting bigger, faster, stronger. But yeah, I'm starting to think to myself, okay, we have to start looking at the list, because between now and say the next 7 or 8 years, we're going to have a absolute landfall, just an absolute monster class of rock and rollers, big timers, who are going to be biting the dust.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, I mean, Roger Daltrey, Pete Townsend, Ringo Starr, Phil Collins, Eric Clapton, Mick Jagger, Keith Richards.
I mean, these guys are in their 80s. Let's be real.
They're all, they could all go tomorrow and it would not surprise anybody.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And
especially rock and rollers who have, a lot of cases, not exactly lived a quiet country life in a rocking chair. It's amazing that a lot of these guys not only are still alive, but still performing when, the old adage, Tony, is really true. It's not the age, it's the mileage. And a lot of these guys have big time mileage.
That is, I mean, there's a kind of Willie Nelson who is still smoking dope, and he seems
amazing.
To be doing pretty well. Maybe I think the whole idea is you stay off the hard stuff. You want to get the stuff that mellows you out. It seems like it adds a few years to you. I don't know, but Keith Richards, he just stopped doing coke about 5 years ago, and the guy's 80 years old, and he's still just kicking it. I think his blood veins are like this big because he's had so much blood transfusions going through. So your thoughts? I mean, if somebody's going to get in, Robert Plant should get in.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, even if he didn't have Led Zeppelin, Robert Plant should get in because he had such a great solo career.
Yeah.
So you should let these people in, or do you go the route? Hey, listen, no, we want to make sure we can put in 6 to 8 people every single year, and we're not going to put someone in. Again, I would love to know if Jimmy Buffett got in because he passed away, or did he get in because he was going to make it in anyway?
Yeah, I think I don't know how you do this, but I think you absolutely need to prioritize the people that are much older. I mean, I would be absolutely appalled if a 50-year-old got in over an 80-year-old because they're just the flavor of the month, or for lack of a better term, because they're and all of us are day to day. We recognize that. And it would be really sad that if a younger person that deserved it now had something terrible befall them and they never had the opportunity. But, that list that you rattled off, there were 10 names there that immediately to me seemed like absolute slam dunks. And you don't, a posthumous, what a bitter pill to swallow that, you only get in after you pass away and can't really appreciate that honor. So I don't know how you do that, but I think you got to prioritize the people that are really getting up there in age.
Now, I want to ask you a question here, and this is just right off the top of my head here. Um, does it interest you at all being in the Radio Hall of Fame? Would it mean something to you to be in the Raw? By the way, I didn't even know what the Hall of Fame was. I'm looking at the 24 nominees chosen by the Radio Hall of Fame nominating committee. It's coming up on Monday, June 3rd. More than 900 industry members will receive a ballot to cast votes for up to 6 nominated individuals. And they vote on the 17th at the Omni Nashville Hotel in Nashville, Tennessee. Would that be something that, and I thought about this the other day because I'm being serious. I like Aldo Greco spent 20 years in the National Football League. Ray Guy is the only kicker to make it into the Hall of Fame. I'm pretty sure Adam Vinatieri is going to make it in. I think there's a couple other guys, maybe Morton Anderson will make it in. I think that Aldo Greco should be in the Hall of Fame just because he played 20 years. That's a long time, and he was on a Super Bowl team, but did not win a Super Bowl. Now, kicking was a lot different when he was in the league as opposed to when he got out in 2000 or 2001. What would it mean to you to be in the Radio Hall of Fame, or would you give a squat? Do you know enough about the Radio Hall of Fame? And I got a reason why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, it's funny because I think anybody who's got any familiarity with my career knows that I have been blessed with the opportunity to work in another industry and continue to, while I can pursue my passion for what I would prefer to be doing, which is radio. And if I'd been full time and I had made some major contributions, that would certainly be something great. But it's odd with my personal situation, Tony. In my career, in the 35 or 40 years I've been in it, I probably absolutely belong in the Greyhound Racing Hall of Fame, which is at Abilene, Kansas. I've done more things. My resume is more varied in Greyhound racing, and I have been an impact guy that has started big events.
Is that something that could happen?
I think it's got a good chance. I also came along in that industry at a time where the industry was under tremendous criticism because there was no Greyhound adoption program, no real plan for dogs post-career. I was one of the driving forces to change that to this day where adoption rates in Greyhound racing has pretty much disappeared now, but it was at the end of my career, almost 100%. So and that would mean a lot to me because that's the industry that I really made an impact in. And between training dogs and managing tracks and creating a national television event called the Night of Stars that I anchored 13 times from New York City, basically I tried to come up with a concept similar to the Breeders' Cup in horse racing, and it was phenomenally successful. So that would mean a lot to me. And I think sure, I would love to be recognized as a great broadcaster, but that was not my primary industry, and I haven't made anywhere near the contribution in radio that I have in racing.
Well, that makes total sense, and by no stretch was I assuming that you had a bigger career in radio than you did in Greyhound racing, because I didn't realize you were that big of a part of it. So how do you go about getting nominated for something like that? Someone has to nominate you. How can we push you through?
Yeah, it's a nomination process.
Have you been nominated before?
Not to my knowledge. I've been involved in the process. My father-in-law, Carol Blair, who was a legendary Greyhound trainer and major figure in the sport, every year I would nominate him for the Hall of Fame while he was still with us because he was in failing health. And I found out later on, because I asked the director of the Hall of Fame, I said, every year I nominate him, he's never on the ballot. He says, well, he takes his name out of consideration every year and says so-and-so deserves to get in before me. Wow. And I finally said, look, that's BS. He's not going to be around much longer. I don't care what he says. You put him on the ballot this year, and he was almost unanimous. And it was one of the great real accomplishments of my career to really drive that home, because a lot of his friends and family and people that should have taken that step a long time before that, he should have been 10, 15 years before he was finally inducted. And he did live to see that. And it's one of really the greatest satisfactions of my career.
That's an awesome story. And to know you were a big part of that, to know that he was scratching his name every time you put him in, you're like, what in the heck is going on? Someone was asking me about it about a week ago. Again, I don't know enough about the Hall of Fame. I've won like an Addy, which is the equivalent of an Oscar in radio, which is what I didn't even know I was nominated at the time. But the Hall of Fame is the Hall of Fame. I mean, we always ask that question: would you rather be a Hall of Famer or a champion? I'll ask you the question in your sport. If you were in your sport, would you rather be a Hall of Famer or would you rather be a champion? I'm asking you.
Oh gosh,
would you rather win? Would you rather win a Super Bowl? Would you rather be in the Hall of Fame in Canton?
Yeah, I really am so much more about team than an individual effort. And the most satisfying things in my career have been things that I have developed with others.
Yep.
And the whole. I've opened a lot of tracks and been involved in from the ground up in a lot of those operations, including here in Birmingham. So I would answer that I've gotten a lot more satisfaction in things I've done in conjunction with others than my individual situation. So I would rather win a championship.
There you go. There you have it. All right. So champion, Hall of Famer, two guys just looking for their accolades. I'm just, we're just hoping to maybe put something out there. Maybe someone who's listening and they go, Keefer, that guy needs to be in the Greyhound.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't even know there was a Hall of Fame for Greyhounds. That's
yeah,
pretty cool.
It's in Abilene, Kansas. It's right across the street from the Dwight Eisenhower. That's where he grew up. The commanding general in World War II, two-time president. The Eisenhower Museum and Library and final resting place for he and Mamie in Abilene. Abilene's a great place to go. Abilene is so involved in American history too. It was the major railroad junction that really opened up the whole country back in the 1800s.
Was that where the Gold Spike was?
It was a wild west town because all these cowpokes would drive cattle into Abilene and then just cut loose on the weekend when they got paid. And Abilene's got so much history. It's really a cool place to go that you would ever think of if you're driving in the Midwest. But spend a day or two in Abilene. It is definitely worth it.
It should be a good country song about Abilene.
And on this subject, before we wap up, I mentioned it to you earlier, just on a side conversation. I have an association with a guy in Atlanta named Gary McKee, who in the 70s and 80s, early 80s, was the guy in Atlanta as Atlanta just absolutely blew up in terms of becoming a major U.S. city. Gary McKee was the most recognizable radio personality in Atlanta at that time, just like Tony Kurre was here in Birmingham in a lot of the years where it really came into its own. And I'm really hopeful, and maybe we can talk about this subject, and both you guys are pretty humble, but I would like to kind of lead that discussion about, you guys should be getting consideration, because not only did you make a contribution in radio, you guys became the iconic figure that really, you ask anybody on the street here or in Atlanta, they're going to say Gary McKee over there. They're going to say Tony Kurre here. You're still associated directly with the growth of media and radio in this market. And I think it'd be a great show to sit down with both you guys and just kind of talk about your careers and the correlations and the differences and talk about the Hall of Fame.
Well, thank you very much. And it's something, like I said, someone brought that up. That's very kind of you to say that. I that's one of those things where I've never thought about it. I don't think it'll ever happen. I don't even know what you have to do to be.
Well, who are some of the nominees this time? Just for
I have no idea. I haven't looked.
Okay,
but I can tell you right now, I probably don't know any of them.
I mean, are they? I'm wondering, are they sports oriented guys, news oriented guys?
I'll look it up next time we come on. We can talk about
DJs. I'm just wondering, what the criteria is. because if there's a sports category, there's some guys that are absolutely should be in, and if it's news, I mean, there are giant personalities that I hope they're recognizing, but I hope it doesn't discount guys like you and Gary, who again defined radio in their markets, and that's something that's pretty significant.
Well, I appreciate them, man. We're going to define something special coming up Saturday mornings, 10:30, 11 o'clock on ABC 3340. The starting lineup, by the way, there's a show on XM Satellite. It's an NBA show called The Starting Lineup. Do not confuse that starting lineup with this starting lineup, because our starting lineup is better. We have special guests week in and week out, all kinds of fun stuff. The Legends on there, Terry Quinn's on there. Of course, your son's on there, picking ball games. We'll have a good time again on Saturday mornings, 10:30, 11 o'clock, and that goes all the way to football season, when, of course, we pick up the SEC early game of the week, Oklahoma, Texas. Welcome aboard, my friend. Thank you so much for your help and everything you do, need to know, and Keefer and Kurre right here on Tony Kurre Radio. Thank you, sir.
All right, Tony, have a great week.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.